Hi and welcome to Code with Hafiz channel. My name is Hafizullah Masoodi, and in this video I'm going to show you how to implement roles and permissions for your Laravel 9 and Vue JS 3 single page web application. I have this nice to-do application with Fortify authentication and Laravel passport already set up, for which you can see all the tutorial links provided in the description of this video along with its source code. Before going any further, don't forget to give this video a like and a nice comment also if you find it useful. Or let's say you are new to this channel, so don't forget to smash the subscribe button too. Now suppose we want to authorize this application with roles and permissions. So we have to first implement some roles with permissions and assign those roles and permissions to some users. As for roles, we can have admin, manager or employee, etc. And for permissions, we want to limit, for example, these functionalities available in the application, such as who will have the access to create or edit a task or etc. Now we can implement the roles and permissions without using any package. But why don't we ease our work? As you know, Laravel intends to take the pain out of programming. So instead of hard coding everything, I will use a nice package called Laratrust for implementing roles and permissions along with its backend, including the relationships of a user with roles and permissions. Now Laratrust will take care of everything, at least for the backend, including all the relationships. But for front end, it will be still our job to create a way for managing the roles and permissions. So first of all, we need to set up Laratrust in our application. So for that, we can open a new tab and search for Laratrust in the Google. And let's go to this first link. And in here, if we scroll down a little bit, you can see all the versions are listed in here. Now because we are using Laravel 9, so we can use Laratrust 7.x. So let's click on this and let's go to the installation tab in the sidebar. And to install Laratrust, you can see we can use this composer command. So let's copy it, and I already have opened the project in the Visual Studio Code. So let's go to the Visual Studio Code, and in here I will open the terminal and let's paste our command. Now let's press enter. Now this being done, let's head back to the documentation and let's copy this another command which will copy all the Laratrust vendor files. So let's copy it and let's paste it in here also and press enter. Now let's get back to the browser and let's also clear the cache. So let's copy this command and let's paste it here and press enter. And if we get back to the browser, let's set up all the files. So let's copy this, paste it here, and it will prompt us for yes or no. So let's say yes, and you can see it created the migration file, the role model, permission model, and it added the Laratrust user trait to user model, which we already have this user model in our application. So let's head back to the browser, and now we have to composer dump autoload. So let's copy this and paste it here and press enter. Now if we get back to the browser, now is the time to migrate, but I will do a fresh migration. So let's copy this command and paste it here, but let's also say colon fresh to create a fresh migration. So let's press enter and let's clear the terminal. And now let's get back to the browser, and guys, we want to have the Laratrust seeder also, but you cannot find the setup guide of the seeder in here, and for that you have to go to usage and click on this seeder. So let's click on it, and now you can see we have this php artisan command to create the seeder files. So let's copy this and let's paste it in the terminal and press enter. And let's get back to the browser. Let's copy this vendor command and let's paste it also, press enter. And let's also composer dump autoload again, let's paste it here and press enter. And after this, if we get back to the browser, now is the time to copy this line of code, and let's copy it. And you can see we should copy and paste it in the database, and then seeders, and then database seeder.php. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and I think we can close the terminal. So let's go to database seeders and database seeder, and let's paste our code in here and save the file. Now we can close it, and let's open this Laratrust seeder.php. And in here, guys, this is the file where all the logic about the seeder is write it here. And if we scroll down a little bit, you can see this is the part where all the users that we will declare in a moment will be created. And you can see each of the user is created, and then all the roles will be attached to the user. Well, not all the roles that we will describe for a user, those roles will only be attached to this user. So beside assigning or attaching roles, we also want to attach or sync the permissions for a user too. So for that, what we can do is press enter here, and we can use this user variable. So let's say $user and then arrow, and then we have a function or a relationship by the name of permissions, which comes by default with Laratrust. So let's say permissions parenthesis arrow, and then we want to sync for the permissions. And you can check out this permission variable in here, and you can see we are getting all the permissions array from here. So that's something we must do in here. Now this being done, we can close this file, and let's minimize all the folders. And now what we can do is go to the config folder, and in here let's open this Laratrust underscore seeder.php. And the first thing that I want to do is make this value true, because whenever we want to run this seeder, we want to create the users also. And if we scroll down, in here we can create some roles. So let's create some roles, and let's say one should be admin, and another one should be, let's say, manager, and another one should be, let's say, employee. And I think that's enough. So let's remove this extra one, and let's remove these permissions also. So I think the user is okay. Let's duplicate it a couple of times, and the next one should be for roles, this one should be for permissions, this one should be for tasks, and this one should be for subtasks. Now for the manager and employee, I will only copy the tasks and subtasks. So let's copy it and paste it in here, and let's paste it for the employee also. Now this being done, we can close this file, and what we can do is run the seeder. And you remember we already migrated all the tables freshly. So let's open the terminal again, and let me clear it first, and then let's say php artisan db :seed, and let's press enter here, and you can see it created all the users, roles and permissions. And if we go to the database, so let's open a new tab, let's go to localhost phpMyAdmin, and let's go to do app database, and you can see now we have this permissions table, permission role, permission user, roles table, role user, and users table. And if you go to the users, you can see these are the users that we have created. So we have an admin user, manager user, and employee user. Now the first thing that I will do is implement roles and permissions for the blade, because I want to show you how you can add permissions or roles to the blade in a single page application, and then we will implement the roles and permissions for the controllers, and then finally we will create or implement roles and permissions for our Vue components also. So let's head back to the text editor, and let me close the terminal, and in here what we can do is go to app, providers, and auth service provider. And the first thing that I want to do is add the role model and permission model at the top. So let's say use, and then app /models /role, and let's duplicate it. Well, this should be role, and the next one is permission. And if we scroll down, we have this boot function in which we will create some gates for each of the roles and permissions. So let's press enter here, and to create our gates, before that we have to try and catch, because if we are not logged in the application, and we don't create the try and catch in here, the gate will throw some errors. So to prevent some errors, we have to try and then catch, and in here let's say \exception, and then $event or e, and in here let's return the event. And inside this try, let's first create the roles gate. So let's say roles gate, and let's get all the roles. So roles should equal to role model : all. And now we can loop for roles. So for each roles as role, and then we want to return a condition. So let's say return, well, before returning, guys, what we can do is create the gate. So let's say gate : define, and we want to define a gate for the name of each role. So let's say role arrow name, and then we can put our comma, and let's say function, and inside the function we have a user, and we also want to use the role variable, and then curly braces, and inside this curly braces now we want to return a condition. So we want to check for the user. If the user has the role, then we want to create a gate for that role. So let's say has role, and this function comes with Laratrust, so keep that in mind. And we want to check for the role arrow name. Let's terminate it. Now this being done, we can do the same for the permissions. So let's duplicate it, and for this one let's say permissions, and instead of this one let's also say permissions, and this should be permission model. Well, let's copy this and paste it here, and in here also, but it should be permission. And let's say this is permission arrow name, and we also want to pass the permission for the use, and in here let's also say permission arrow name. And instead of checking for has role, this time we want to check for has permission, and simple as that. Now what we can do is close this file, and to check our gates, we can now use the gates in our blade and also in the controller. So let's go to the blades first. So I will minimize everything, and now let's go to resources, views, and home plate. And in here what I will do is, let's suppose we want to give some permissions or assign some roles to this tasks route or router link. So in here what we can do is use Laravel blade syntax. One is @can, in which we can only pass one argument, and if you want to pass multiple arguments, you can use can any. So in this case I will use can any, and then let's end can any, and this first one should have some parentheses and then an array, and for now let's only declare admin, and let's put this li inside this can any. Now this being done, let's go to the browser and check our code. So let's go to the browser and let's go to the project tab and let's refresh. Well, first let's log in as admin. So admin@app.com, password is password, and you can see it is showing the router link. But if I log out and log in as manager and password is password, now you can see it is not showing the link, which means our roles are working just fine. Now let's create or declare some other arguments for the manager and employee also. So in here what I will do is put a comma and let's say manager, and put another comma and let's say employee. And if we save it, get back to the browser, refresh, now you can see we have access to the tasks. So let's go to the tasks, guys, and in here what I will do is open the inspect elements and go to the console tab, and for now you can see we don't have anything in the console, but let's assign some permissions to for example this get tasks function that we have in the controller, because in this page we have a function that gets all the tasks and it lists all the tasks in this table. So let's go to the Visual Studio Code, and what I will do is open the sidebar and let's go to app, http controllers and task controller, and you can see we have this function of get tasks, and in here what I will do is declare some access or permission to this, and we can do that by using $this keyword and then arrow authorize, and we want to authorize this according to a permission that we made for the tasks. And if we go to the database and let's go to the permissions, and if you scroll down you can see we have all these permissions for the tasks. For example, for tasks create, tasks read, tasks update and tasks delete, and the one that we want is this tasks read. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and in here let's say tasks hyphen read, and if we save it, get back to the browser, go to the project tab, and if we refresh, still we won't get anything in the console because our code is just fine and this user has access to the tasks. But if I go to the Visual Studio Code and instead of tasks let's say roles, because we want to check the permissions, and you already know that this roles permission is only assigned to the admin. If you remember in the CRUD file we only left the roles and permissions and users permission only for the admin. So in this case it will throw some errors. So let's go to the browser, and if we refresh now you can see it says it is forbidden, and if we have some data it won't show in here. So it means our permissions are working just fine. Now let's head back to the Visual Studio Code and fix this and save it, and now what we can do is close these files, and now is the time to implement the roles and permissions for our Vue components. Well, I didn't want to close this home blade because we still need to write some code in here. So what I will do is scroll down a little bit, and to use the roles and permissions for the Vue components, you can see we are loading the router view in here, which means all our Vue components will be rendered through this blade, and we need our roles and permissions or the user data attach it with this blade. So in here, let's put some enter, and let's create some script tags, and let's say window.user to create a user variable in the window API, and then let's say it should be equal to @JSON, and then we can use our auth API, so auth parenthesis arrow user and then parenthesis, and this will get the user data. Now let's press enter, and let's say window dot user underscore, let's say roles first, which should be equal to also @JSON auth parenthesis arrow user parenthesis arrow roles. Now let's duplicate it, and instead of roles, let's say permissions. Now let's copy it and paste it in here also. Now this being done, we can use these window variables in our Vue components. So what I will do is go to the JS, and let's go to components and task component, and first let me close the sidebar, and let's scroll down. If we scroll down a little bit in here, we have this data field in here, so let's create some objects in here. Well, the first one I want to create is for the current underscore user, which will be an empty object, and then let's create one for the roles, so roles, and I will declare this as a new set. And for the permissions, I also want a set, so let's duplicate it and let's say permissions. Now after doing this, what we can do is create the created function in here. So let's say created and then curly braces, and to check our code or our user data or the permissions and rules are working fine, in here let's say console.log, and let's say window.user, and let's duplicate it. Next one should be for user underscore roles, and this one should be for user underscore permissions. And to check our code, we have to compile all the changes. So let's open the terminal, let me clear it, and we have to run yarn run watch. So our changes have been compiled successfully. Let's get back to the browser, and if I refresh now, you can see we have this user data, we have our role or roles, and then we have all the permissions that are assigned to this user. Now let's use this data in Vue components. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and what I will do is assign this data, each of the data, to each of these objects. So in here let's press enter, and let's first say this dot current underscore user equals to window.user, and next let's say window.roles and then dot for each, and let's say or then an anonymous function, and inside here let's say this dot roles dot, and because we are using set, we have a function in set which is add, and we can add a new element in that set. So let's say add and then or dot name. And one thing you should always remember, is that why are we using sets? Because set will eliminate duplicate data. For example, if we have two roles with the same name, it will only take one and put it inside the set. So keep that in mind. Now next, we also want to do this for the permissions. Well guys, this is not only roles, this is user underscore roles. So fix that. Now the next one is for user underscore permissions, and in here we want to say this dot permissions set, and let's say this should be p, and then we want to add p dot name. Well, p dot name, and let's close the terminal also. Now let's use this data. So let's scroll to the top. First of all, let's check for the current user. Now what I will do is create a call md of 8 in here. So let's say dot call dash md dash 8, and inside here let's create another div with the class of alert and another class of bg success and another class of text light and another class of text center. And inside here let's create an h5, and let's say you are logged in as double curly braces, and we have current underscore user object, then dot name. And if we save it now, and let's get back to the browser, let's refresh, you can see now it's showing our user name. And if we log out, log in as admin, and let's go to the task component, now you can see it is saying you are logged in as admin. Now let's also assign or use the permissions and roles. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and let's suppose we want to assign the roles for this action of this table. So in here let's say v-if, and let's check for the roles. So roles dot, and we have another function with the set which is has, and it will only check for the argument that we will pass in here. So let's suppose we want to check for the admin. Now let's also copy this and paste it for the /td, and if we save it, get back to the browser, refresh, it is showing the action. But what if we log out and log in as manager, and let's say password, let's go to the task component. Now you see it is not showing the actions. And let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and to work this for the manager also, in here we can say or, and let's copy this line of code from here and paste it again, and this time we want to say manager. And if we save it, get back to the browser, refresh, now you see it's showing for the manager also. And if we check out the admin, it will be available for both of the users at the same time. And you can see already that actions is also available for the admin. Now you can check the permissions by your own, because it is the same process, and you can check the permissions as we checked the roles. Now this being done, guys, you know how to implement roles and permissions with gates and without gates using Laratrust for your Laravel 9 and Vue JS 3 single page application. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and a nice comment also. And if you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe also. So thanks for watching, guys. See ya in the next video.